Welcome to Keep What You Earn, a show for entrepreneurs and business owners who want to scale and build enterprise value without making costly mistakes. I'm your host, Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CFO and CPA who left a career serving Fortune 50 companies in Wall Street to help business owners just like you make life-changing wealth with your business. These episodes are meant to be super tactical and actionable, but please remember, consult your own financial professional before you implement anything you learn in this podcast. Now, if you'd be interested in working with us to do so, check out the show notes for more information about our company, Keep What You Earn Co. All right, let's start the show. Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm really excited to share today's guest episode with you because I came upon our guest today through a bit of an unconventional way. So I was visiting a client in Florida, and I discovered that I really needed to get my brows waxed. And I wanted to go. I knew that I could find some place to go. And I went on Google. I found a place with great reviews. I walked in, and my mind was blown by the great experience I had at FACE Foundry. And this goes to Michele, who is going to be our guest today, and how she has set up this business to be such a scalable, yet high touch, high customer service type of business that I immensely valued. And I immediately noticed those little details. So what I wanted to do was I reached out to her in the way that I do. I said, you know what? I got to figure out who this is. And I got to reach out to her. And that's how we ended up meeting. And I thanked her for this great experience and then said, you know what? Our listeners could really benefit from hearing your wisdom on how you created such a cool business. So here's a little bit on Michele before we tee up the episode. Michele is the founder and CEO of FACE Foundry. With her background in apparel design and owning a successful women's clothing company, Michele's entrepreneurial journey took a new direction when she founded FACE Foundry, which was inspired by her struggles with hormonal acne. She sought to create a skincare experience that was accessible, affordable, and tailored to meet the needs of busy individuals. Under her leadership, FACE Foundry has quickly grown with ambitious plans for expansion both nationally and internationally. So I'm really excited. Who knows? Maybe she'll end up in Costa Rica. But I'm really excited to introduce this episode. This is a gem. You're going to get so much great advice on building a scalable yet high-touch business from Michele. Hey, Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm really excited to have you because I personally love, we've had a lot of guests on the show that, pitch us to come on or that we encounter. And one of my favorite things to do is to get to speak to fellow founders, people who are really admirable in the industry. And how I found you was really fun because I didn't know much about FACE Foundry. And then I went to visit a client actually in Florida, and I ended up needing your services. And I actually went in and had such a great experience. I was like, who the hell is behind this? Because it was just a great customer experience all around. So as a customer, I can say, as a customer and someone who's interviewing you now, like we have a lot to learn from Michele. So I'm excited to chat with you.
Wow. Thank you. Well, I'm so happy that you had such a nice experience because that's obviously our goal and our mission. And our clients are everything. And they truly have been the backbone of us being able to expand so quickly in the franchising world. So I'm happy you had such a wonderful experience. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And, also I came up, one of my first jobs was at a franchise, the typical, token franchise, McDonald's. And I learned a lot about consistency of quality and systems through them. What a great blessing so young. I wanted to ask you about, what was your exposure to business ownership younger in your life and kind of what led you down this path? I want to get a little bit of this origin story before we dive into FACE Foundry and all of the elements that make it so successful.
Yeah, I actually grew up in a family business. So exposure was very young. It was an expectation that we worked in our family business, which was construction of in-ground pools. So my dad actually still owns that company. I still talk to him about a lot of business conversations that he has in that realm. And I still love just learning about businesses. I learned a ton from him and from my mom. It was a family business. it was the expectation we would start working at 13, and that's exactly what we did. And it was like a expedited MBA. By the time I graduated high school, I had already had exposure to customer service and hospitality and making sure that you're really following the client and what they're asking for and making sure you're delivering. And you might think, okay, construction, how does that relate to, facial services? Business translates, I promise. And it did. And I absorbed a lot of information before I then charted out on my own and did something totally different from construction. I actually went into apparel design and merchandising. So I was designing women's clothing, and that slowly evolved into then opening a women's clothing store. At the time, it was 2010. Myself and my business partner, we had just graduated college. We had $8,000 each that we brought to the table, which at that time was more money than, I had ever seen. And we executed our first location. It was a great success. We grew organically. We ended up opening 9 locations throughout the Midwest. We looked into franchising. So that was kind of my first take at franchising and what it would look like with a business concept. And the women's clothing chain, which is still in existence, it's called Primp. It was not the concept to franchise in our opinion. So we grew it corporately. My story that I tell at Discovery Day to franchisees, I could not stop thinking about this facial concept though. And so I sat on this idea even when I was in women's retail, and I finally decided I have to pull the trigger after about a year of sitting on it, creating a business plan. And ultimately, I knew I did not want to straddle between 2 businesses. So December 14th, 2018 at 10:30 a.m., I signed over my shares of Primp to my then business partner at the time. And at 10:35, I walked into the leasing office of the Galleria in Edina, Minnesota, and I signed the lease for what would become our flagship location for Face Foundry. So I had 5 full minutes. Knew I didn't want to do both, but that's my long-winded story of that's kind of my breadcrumb trail of how I moved through businesses and how I was able to get so much exposure was truly at a young age and, grateful for my parents.
And coming from, so we have construction, we have apparel, retail, merchandising, to now facial services. It's a bit of it's a little bit of a sampler platter of different major types of businesses, small businesses that are out there. What do you think is one of the biggest through lines, or we'll say core truths, that transcend all of them that you learned?
Great question. I touched on it a little bit before, but the customer will tell you what they want. All you have to do is listen. And it sounds so simple, right? But truly, every single business, every time I can think back to exactly when a client would walk in and say, this is what I'm hoping for, or this would be great. Or have you ever thought of, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, oh, actually, that's a great idea. If that's what they're asking for, or if I'm hearing this multiple times, let's just innovate and implement. And so that is something I will say every single business, no matter what, all you have to do is listen. And I think of our clients from a Face Foundry standpoint, I think of our clients as, yes, the people coming in to get services in our facial bars, but I also think of our clients as our franchisees. So our franchisees have really helped mold and shape the brand that we have become and we are continuing to evolve into. So making sure that you know who your client is as well.
Yeah. And I listening to your client, couldn't agree more. I was holding back a fuck yeah when you were talking. I was like, yes. But also, why do you think so many people don't do that? I feel like there's this huge resistance somehow. People aren't doing it as much as they probably should, or there's somehow this, why is that so hard?
Change is hard, right? Naturally, I think as human beings, change is hard because you have to chart a new course, you have to put more thought around it. It's going to take, more implementation, more process that's laid out to make sure that it can be executed on a larger scale. So I think resistance to change is just almost like human nature in a weird way, because you want to take just a very simple, easy path, because I think that's truly biologically what we're trying to do, right? Is like not create weird resistance. So I would say that oftentimes I've seen, people just resist change because it's going to be a lot of work. Also, I would say I've seen business owners and founders create a concept that is just for them and for their liking. And I totally get that. That is truly the foundation of Face Foundry, was because I struggled with hormonal acne. I needed this concept because I couldn't find it for myself. But being able to identify that you are not your only customer. And so what are the other demographics that you're serving? And if they make up a larger part of your client base, they make up a bigger part of the pie, you need to serve them first. So I think that those two things would be call outs that I would make as to why people maybe aren't as agile or excited about change.
Yeah. And I would agree that it's a little bit of ego because they start this business mostly to be in control and to have control over their schedule or over what customers they take in. And then they get a little bit, I say, high on the ego train of designing it the way they want and kind of decorating it the way they want. And I go, yeah, but then your business isn't scalable or sellable if you're, for example, painting the house lime green paint because you love that color. Nobody else is going to like it.
Yes. You totally touched on something, and I'll use this example. You're absolutely right. And I think that the founders that can shed that ego and pivot quickly and recognize like, hey, I didn't get it right here, or this needs to change. I'll use the example. So when we launched Face Foundry, we had designed the space where we had a long bar where you could come in and you could get wellness shots and juice drinks, things like that. It was very obvious, probably within a week, that it was uncomfortable to sit at the bar because there was services going on, and uncomfortable for the clients getting services. And ultimately, majority of people wanted to come in and they just wanted to get facials. They did not want to sit at the bar and converse and have juice. And I grossly underestimated the shelf life of fresh juice as well. So there were a lot of factors in this equation. 10 days in, we closed down, we repositioned the store. So after, you can imagine spending a lot of money on our construction, we had to go in and make a big change again, but it was so worth it because we realized we had room for more beds. We were not going to be a concept that sold juice. We could hand it out at events, but it was not going to be our revenue driver. So recognizing that it's okay to make a mistake as long as you're willing to hold yourself accountable and fix it quickly.
Yeah. And this goes back to like that concept, like simple scales, fancy fails, is that's a
Yeah.
fancy, fun idea and a little bit novel. And it's like, wouldn't it be
Yep.
cool if, and then usually something
Yep.
after that is cool, is fun, isn't scalable, or isn't actually
Yes.
what the customer asked for.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to totally use that phrase. Thank you.
Credit to the Hormozis for that. I hear that all the time from them. But it's very true. So speaking of scaling, how many locations are we at now? And I want to like take us to Face Foundry today. So we had the flagship store. A lot happened in between, which we can go into some of those stories. But where are we now in 2025 in terms of the breadth of where these are?
We have 63 locations open. We'll be right around 74 by the end of the year. We've got a lot of leases signed for 2026 and beyond. So by the end of next year, we'll have 107 locations
Wow.
open, which we're really excited about. Yeah, 2026 is really like our flywheel year. It's really catching on and growing. It was interesting. I knew I wanted to franchise this concept from the get-go. I loved franchising, like I touched on. I couldn't franchise my previous concept. It just was not the one to scale with and to franchise. It wasn't the right business model. With Face Foundry, though, I knew I wanted to franchise this. And so from the get-go, we really developed and documented all of the things that we were doing to make sure that we were capturing how we could lay out the blueprint for franchising and implement it. a key part of that was finding locations in different areas of the Twin Cities that we could showcase the works. It's a proven concept. So 2019 into 2020, we opened 3 here locally. We were so excited. I was going to launch franchising March 1st, 2020, which was such odd timing, right? Navigated COVID, we kind of relaunched. And from there, we've found all of our franchisees have come because they were clients, just like your story. They've experienced the concept and then they've decided, hey, I align with this mission. I like their value set. I'm going to sign on here. So it's been a really fun, organic way of growing, but still growing pretty rapidly.
Mm-hmm. It's proof of concept, like, compounded, right? Where it's proof
Yep.
of concept at the customer level, driving a proof of concept at the franchisee level, and multiplying. And that's really where I love those kind of, like, I call it like organic growth of a franchise, where it's not to say you're not trying to sell the franchisees on this concept, but the concept sells itself and it's able to have that influence. And that's kind of like the mark of something where you've hit a sweet spot, right? What do you think? I just want to go back to what you talked about with the blueprint, because I think so many business owners, I really want to like hone in on this, double click on it and be like, guys, listen to what she said from the get go. Even if franchising wasn't her plan, there was a blueprint, though, that she could follow. And I think if everybody operated like that was a possibility for their business, everyone would be better off for it if they just started documenting the blueprint like as soon as freaking possible.
Right. And I get it. I get why you don't sometimes, because you are wearing so many hats as a founder. So I do think going in and having a really good team that understands that that's the ultimate goal, is to make sure that we're documenting and figuring out ways to improve our process. COVID, though, was a huge blessing in disguise, because we would have never been allocated 3 months where we were, closed down. We weren't servicing, obviously mandated to close. And we were really looking inward and saying, how can we do this better? How do we set up an online training platform? How do we make sure that we're conveying information on a dashboard where it's accessible and we don't need as much face-to-face interaction? So I understand why it's really hard to do in the beginning. That being said, know that you don't have to do it alone. You mission aligned, and you know that the goal is to make sure that we have these processes. And I think consecutive build outs, 2 months apart for us, the learns were still there. So there wasn't enough time where you forgot, hey, what would we have done differently with version 1 to version 2 to version 3? They were so back to back that you could have those learns fresh and top of mind and implementing. So I think that those are a few call outs that I would just notate. Granted, I get that it's a big capital commitment to execute quickly and have a team. For me, it was well worth it, because I've done both. With Primp, we executed, it was slower. We didn't necessarily have all of the processes, because you don't know what you don't know with your first business, but refining certain things and making sure that you're moving forward and you're not afraid to, again, shed that ego. I think that was a big part of why we were able to expand so quickly.
Hey, Shannon here, and I have a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this podcast and enjoying this episode, please leave us a review on your podcast platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, any of them, and let us know if you're enjoying the show. One of your biggest takeaways, we would really, really appreciate it. Okay, back to the show. Yeah, and speaking of that, shedding the ego and having those types of traits in franchisees, what do you think are, based on what was it, 63 now, 107 in the near future? Was that the number? We
Yeah.
it begs the question, what are you seeing as differentiators in your franchisees from those who are crushing it and those who might be a little bit behind? Because I know not everybody can be A+ students, right? So what do you think are the big differentiators for successful franchisees if someone were thinking of becoming one? What would you basically give them as advice and use as an example from those who are doing well?
Yeah, this is top of mind because we just hosted a Discovery Day yesterday. And so I always like to feel out our franchisees. It has to be mutually beneficial, right? Like if we're going to award them a territory, because right now we've got a really, really long pipeline of people that want to come into the system, it has to be mutually beneficial. And first and foremost, they have to be passionate and excited about this concept. If you are kind of indifferent or you're not into wellness and helping people feel confident in their skin and really leading by example, it's okay. It's just not the concept for you. We need people that are 100% passionate. The most successful franchisees that we have in our brand, I like to say they are mayors of their town. They are out, they are shaking hands, kissing babies, they are doing pop-ups, they are doing other brand events, they're partnering with other businesses in their area. They are local community leaders that are huge advocates, and they eat, sleep, and breathe our brand, and everybody in the community knows them for it. So I would call that out as well, because if that isn't your personality type, you need to make sure that you have a strong number two that will be able to execute that and speak to the brand and is that personality. The last question I always ask is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how competitive are you? Because for me, like, I'm off the charts, right? I want to go out there. I am super competitive. I want to be the best. I want that same shared mentality with our franchisees. So I want someone that's hungry, that's eager, that's willing to do what it takes to make sure that they're pushing, above and beyond.
Yeah, and I love that you're qualifying that as like a core value because I think a lot of people, whether it's franchisees or even employees, almost afraid to ask for what they want in those qualities. Like there's a little bit of this hesitation, I feel, where people feel like, well, I have to hire somebody or I have to get this franchisee or I have to open this location. And you turn a blind eye to so many red flags about the founder or the employee or the franchisee. And you say, oh yeah, but it'll be fine. And 9 times out of 10, whenever I've had that thought, seen my clients have that thought or anything, and I go, yeah, it's not going to be. It's
Yeah.
like they're
Yeah.
showing you who they are. They're showing you who they are.
Yeah.
They're being honest. But it comes down to asking that question outright. How competitive are you on a scale of 1 to 10? That's objective, measurable, and you know what the minimum is that you'll tolerate, period. And I think you have to have some type of bold line in the sand like that when it comes to evaluating the people who will carry your brand and wear it.
100%. And I also like to add, and this is typically when I'm interviewing employees, but also I'll sprinkle it in when we're talking with potential franchisees, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how lucky are you? Right? Because luck, I think, really does, it's synonymous for how you view the world in a
Mhm.
way. And if you have a positive outlook and you believe that it's the glass is half full, I think that's always the team members that have worked out really well for us and succeeded.
Yeah, I love that actually. That's an interesting question. I was even
It always
contemplating
throws
like, how can
people
I
for a
answer
loop.
that? Yeah.
I know, it throws people for a loop and you're not expecting it, especially in more of like the context of interviewing employees.
Mhm.
But I always liked it, and it's been able to be a question that you get a really good read on someone's outlook very quickly, and their initial reaction and their initial number is always pretty honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I think because there's no real like, because what's one of those things where you don't know what the right answer is. Like you don't know
Yeah,
what the person wants to hear. So you have no choice
yeah,
but to be as honest as you can and hope that it's a good match versus, asking, I don't know, some empty question where you know the answer is 10 and then they'll just like, oh, I'm a
yeah.
10 plus or whatever. It's just like, come on. I love having that, triggering that honesty. That's key. So we talked about some of the traits of the most successful franchisees. What do you think are the core mistakes that then, I mean, other than the polar opposite of what you've described, right? Not being a community builder, kind of being quiet in the background and not really boosting the brand. What are some other things that you think, maybe even internally, that are some mistakes that people are making who maybe aren't as successful with the franchise?
So you touched on our level of customer service, and I mentioned we have a client journey that we follow very closely.
Hmm.
If you are following that client journey and you are making sure that your estheticians and your team members are advocating for every single step and within that client journey, there's follow-up, there's a real personalization there. The franchisees that follow that client journey, you know, in conjunction with obviously high marketing spend and being out in the community, there's a lot of factors that being able to execute that is very, very important. And I think that's one thing that we've really honed in on. And as we kind of retrain on it, we start to see a big increase and a big lift in sales. So it's something that it seems really simple as a template, but truly it does impact every single area of their business.
Mhm.
One thing that we've also identified is having franchisees that, again, are that community leader, making sure that they are from the location, that they have a store or within, an hour or two drive time. That's something we've really tried to touch on and be more mindful of as we welcome more franchisees into our system, having those parameters and mentioning that upfront. Now, one of our most successful franchisees, she does not live in the location where she crushes it. So there's always going to be exceptions to that rule. But moving forward, what we've seen is typically she's an outlier. I would say having that local person that lives there is really crucial.
Yeah. And also in that kind of feeling, I think this in a way, very indirectly, this makes sense what you're saying, because going back to my experience, I did not know it was a franchise until I dug deeper and deeper and found out who owns this. I want to go say hi and say thank you and give them kudos. And I was like, oh, it's like 60 locations. Oh, it's a full franchise. It's like a whole model. And I did not get that impression walking in. It didn't feel systematic. It felt boutique. I walked
I
in and
love that.
because I was in a town I wasn't familiar with. And I was like, I'm gonna go find good SEO, by the way. I'm gonna go find a place that will do this. I find Face Foundry. I think there are a couple of locations, but you never know. It could be in one town, two locations. And I pull up and I get there, have a great experience all the way from the front desk. I think they even offered me a chocolate at one point. And I was like, I
Yeah.
just got my brows done here. You guys are really fancy. I was like, don't make this a big thing. Gave me a thing to put my purse on. I was like, oh, this is so nice. This is like spa at the high-end
Surprise
hotel.
and delight.
Yeah, exactly. So that it was memorable, right? I remembered that from, 4 months ago. And from one visit. And it felt boutique because I felt like they were trying as hard as a boutique business owner does to do that surprise and delight. Because I feel like sometimes franchise businesses get away from that unscalable, perceptively unscalable aspect, which is the high touch customer experience. And I've always been a fan of, like, I always kind of assumed that high touch customer experience and scalable high volume model were basically mutually exclusive. And anyone who can do both well, I just go, okay, like you figured it out, because I've always said that those two need to be in harmony and not be mutually exclusive.
You touched on something that I'm so happy you touched on, because I'm sure, you're really in tune with franchise concepts, even outside of obviously beauty and wellness.
Right.
In QSR, they have the rule of three, right? You can't have low price, high quality, and speed. And they always say you can pick two of the three, but you can't have all three.
Right.
And I do think it is relative even outside of food. I think that we've really looked at that modeling and said, well, yes, you can have all three. And that's something that's really important to us, making sure that we're super approachable in our price point. Our spaces are clean and high end, and the quality is there. And I think that also then that efficiency is super important as well, because you were probably going in to get your brows done and you're like, I do not want to be here for 2 hours. Like, this is not, I want to be in and out, is my guess.
Well, I didn't know, right? I didn't know what I was walking into. I figured, okay, I got to go quickly get my brows done, then I got to go get lunch, then I got to do XYZ. And I came in and I was like, and I actually, believe it or not, my gut said, I feel bad. I'm wasting their fancy time doing this little service. Like, I'm not going to be a high paying customer and get a massive tip for this person. And I always feel bad doing a small service, or like
popping into the proverbial McDonald's for just a drink, right? And going, sorry, I'm not spending more money. I'm a very conscious consumer where I'm like, sorry, I'm not spending more money here. You guys deserve it. but but I came in here for just one quick thing. And I left going like, if I lived here, I would totally come back. I would book a higher end service. And the follow-ups were great too. I was still being followed up with even after that. And I'm like, wow, like even if you spend a little bit of money or do a little bit of a service, they still treat you like a VIP customer. I think people are too quick, especially in the wellness, aesthetics, these types of things. They're too quick to dismiss the one-time single buyer that just bought the one thing, and they kind of dismiss that as a transactional relationship versus engaging in the relationship and trying to make it more than that. And that's one thing that I think I noticed with Face Foundry, but I've also been more cognizant of recently is, are you treating every customer, no matter how much they spend, as a valued customer?
That is a core value of ours. It's making sure that everybody feels like they're walking into an inclusive environment and they are treated to the exact same level. Because guess what? It doesn't matter if you're only coming in and you're spending, even if you don't even book a service or you don't buy a product, but if you have a great experience, guess what? You'll probably go out, you'll tell your friends, hey, they were super kind there. And it'll be in the back of your head to come back when you have to get another brow service or facial
Mhm.
or host a group party. So I think that every single client and every single interaction really counts and really matters. And that's something we constantly preach. So I'm happy you touched on that because
Yeah.
every single interaction is so important to us.
Because I also feel that when it doesn't happen for me, and
Mm.
I go, you guys don't know this, but I'm an avid Google reviewer.
Yeah.
I usually don't blast people on bad stuff, but you have a massive opportunity. If you make me happy, I will tell everyone I know about you. I am that kind of
Yeah.
person where I'm like, I'll scream your name from the rooftops if I really liked my experience because I appreciate it when people have that attention to detail. Like, I'll go do a podcast about it. Here we are. Right. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
I probably spent $50 in that location, and this is what that turned into. So I'm glad that that was intentional, but I'm just going like, every single person in your customer base, guys, every single, no matter what they spend, by all means treat the high spenders great, but everyone, no matter what they spend, still has a voice and may actually have a
Yep.
microphone and may actually be influential in their community, may have a giant list of people they can tell about you, may be hosting events and have a high budget. You have no idea and you can't judge.
For sure. And it comes back to that inclusive element. Like
Mm,
we strongly believe meet people where they're at on their skincare journey or within their budget, whatever it is, making sure that every single person with a face needs to feel welcome in our studios. And so I think that's
I
important
love
to
that.
call out because I've felt that way before where you don't feel the warm and fuzzies when you walk in and you question like, should I even be in here? I've had that with boutiques. I've had that in so many different areas and it's the worst feeling, right? It's like, how do you avoid that? And even if you walked in and you thought, oh gosh, this is fancy. I don't know if I'm going to be your top spender here. Hopefully that didn't matter because afterwards you felt, hey, there's a heart. There's a warmth here. There's some sort of like compassion and a community. And I hope that you felt that, with
Mhm.
every single interaction, whether with your
Yeah.
esthetician or the front bar.
Yeah. And I'm also one of the weirdos who likes to talk through every service.
I
So
love that.
I'm not
So
a
that's the
I'm not a relaxing person. I'm like, hi, what's going on? Tell me more about your business. Tell me more about what you do. Like, tell me stories. Like, I need human interaction. I've been virtual for X years. Like, be a human. Let's talk. And it's funny because I'm a weird customer. I live in Costa Rica, by the way. I didn't tell you that. Listeners know this, but I go to the med spa
oh, didn't know
here
that.
sometimes, and I will be speaking Spanish the whole time, or I'll just be speaking to them. And they're like, don't you want to relax? I go, no, this is fun. It's so nice to talk to humans that like we can converse and have new ideas and talk to each other outside of like my employees. Love you guys. But outside of my employees and my customers and my family and immediate friends, it's just nice to meet new people naturally and have those conversations. So they were very friendly, very community driven, and I left with that sense for sure. But but yeah, like it's just That's kind of a funny thing I tell them, is it's like, do you want to quiet? I'm like, no, I'm going to be the annoying person
That's
that's talking to you
funny.
the whole time.
We, I had a really odd, early on, odd interaction with a massage therapist when I was super pregnant. It was like my last, moment of silence, and she just talked my ear off. It was fine, but I left that and I thought, okay, as a client, my big takeaway, this was well before Face Foundry was ever in existence. As a client, you should be able to be given that option. Do
Yeah.
you want to relax during your service, or do you want me to walk you through things, right? Because there are two separate types of clients. Some want it just absolutely quiet, and others want to know exactly what you're doing. So making sure that it's not awkward for the client to ask or request that, but we initiate that conversation and that question right out the gate. And I'm
Love it.
sure you had that asked right away. And so you have that optionality to really, it's like choose your own adventure within your experience.
Yeah. And I think this goes back to, I want to pull that point up because this is a great balance of the two, where you don't have to be so standardized and rigid that you block out an entire group of customers and turn them off, where we do it this way. We walk you through everything. It's part of our method. It's like, well, you can have a process where it's like a framework to follow, but there's options in between. There's a decision tree happening mentally, where is this a relaxing or is this a more talkative? In which case I take this approach, I take approach A or approach B, but those are defined. It's not so open-ended. And this is something we've done with our company too, is we say, not everyone gets the same reports, not everyone gets the same output, not everyone gets the same meeting agenda. That would be great if we could just can all of that McDonald's style and be like, this is the recipe everybody gets. We go, but not everyone has the same face. Not everybody has the same personality. Not everybody has the same, in my case, business or priorities. And they're like, you're going to turn off a whole group of people that you feel like you're not listening to them. So just circling back to listening to the customer, you also have to give them the opportunity to speak up.
Oh, for sure. Well, and we constantly are checking in, especially throughout the service. Like, how does this pressure? How does it feel on your skin? Like, I think that communication is key, because there's nothing worse than having a like awkward situation where you're like, I want to say something, but I don't have the time or the right like cadence to interject. So I think
Very
offering
much.
again, streamlined two-way street of communication is so important.
Totally agree.
And I would even with our franchisees, we have a franchise advisory council. I started our convention last year and I said, feedback is a gift. Like I love feedback. Like I want to know what they want to see in their stores, what they want to see from our brand, because they are the ones that are seeing, vast changes every single day in communication with clients. I want to hear how we can make our brand better. So having that two-way street to advocate for feedback, I think is so important.
Yeah. And allowing your franchisees to be heard as well, like that seen, heard, and understood with what their ideas are valued, and that what they're seeing in the market is valued, so that they feel like they're part of the journey as well and not just following orders that's been dictated to them. So as we kind of wrap things up, Michele, what are some of your goals for Face Foundry in the next few years, other than the expansion into over 100 locations, which is amazing? What's next for the brand?
Oh, we have so many exciting things. We're launching something in Q4 I'm so jazzed about. Actually, I'll send one to you because it is such a good product and it's so innovative and it does not exist in the marketplace. And so the innovation gets me really, really excited. The real estate, I know we can sell out the US within the next 2 years, which is really, really fun. But tied with the innovation of what we're going to be able to provide for our clients and our franchisees, those two are just like married together. It really gets me going and gets me excited. We also have a lot of AI components we're folding in to make sure that our clients' experiences continued to be elevated throughout the booking process and then into, aftercare. That is also launching in Q4. Very excited about that. So we've got a lot of things in the pipeline that are going to be just really innovative and something that I don't think people have seen in the wellness industry that we're going to pioneer.
Yeah, and I think that Face Foundry and several other brands are a great example of taking something so simple as a facial or as some type of service like that we've been doing for years. But when you elevate the experience and how it's delivered and the packaging and all of that, it turns it into a completely different experience and a completely different service. And sometimes it's not about finding something novel to offer. It's finding something simple that people are already buying and making it that much better and turning that into the innovation, turning that into the offer. And what I also love that you guys have done, and I want to close on this note, is like we go back to the simplicity that scales. You're not trying to be everything to everyone. You're not turning into the juice bar. You're not turning into these other things. It's going, we just do this with freaking excellence, and we're just going to keep making it more excellent, and then teach more people how to do it and more people how to do it. And that's how you actually scale.
Yes, exactly. The simple approach has worked for us. We are not
Totally.
doing massage. We are not rubbing your feet while a mask sets in. We are truly focusing on your face. And I think that's so important. And so I'm happy you touched on that because it's a great way to close it out.
Yeah.
That make sure that you're focused. You're focused in your business. I think that would be my biggest piece of advice to anyone out there that is looking to start something or become a franchisee.
Yep. Stay focused. Listen to your customer. So bottle that up in a nutshell. You could skip the whole episode and just take away. Stay focused. Yeah. Stay focused and listen to your customer from Michele and Shannon. Michele, when we post this up, we'll have in the show notes all of the links to Face Foundry where they can find all of you guys. Look in your local community for your local Face Foundry. And if you're interested in becoming a franchisee, where should they go?
They can check us out online and they can fill out our intake form. We have a beautiful intake form and also a lot of quick replies from our franchise development team. So all of it is online at facefoundry.com.
Awesome, guys. Go check that out. And Michele, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, so if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know I love talking about profit and cash flow. But if you've mastered these things, the next level thing to be focused on is your customer value. If you have to constantly hustle to sell more and hit your revenue goals, it's important to think about how you can deliver more value, build retention, and maximize the lifetime profitability of every customer. When you invest in a power session, we're able to dive into your customer acquisition cost and determine some personalized strategies to decrease your costs and increase the lifetime value of your customers. Click the link in the show notes to learn more.